Hey there, guys. Kamikaze Ikun here again, coming at you with the part two of my Super Nintendo collection. Now, this, like I said, this is going to be a three-part series. I figured you guys would not want to sit through an hour video of just me ranting and rambling on about, one of my favorite consoles. So, with that out of the way, I guess let's just get started. Now, oh, I forgot to mention too, if you guys like this content, please, give a like, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel because every subscription helps out. So, with that out of the way, let's get started with this collection video. Now, this first game, this to me is probably one of the worst games on the Super Nintendo. And it's funny, I actually have this on the Game Boy, the original Game Boy as well. And both of these ports are absolutely terrible. And that is Batman Forever. Now, this game, just everything about this game is awful. The gameplay, the layouts, the graphics themselves, the music. I mean, I cannot think of one redeeming thing about this game other than the fact that it is just plagued with awful. I mean, there's no other way to describe this. It's just, it's a terrible game. It's a fun prank to play on your friends, but that's pretty much all it has going for it. Now, this next one is Ren and Stimpy Vidiots. Now, I really like the graphics and the presentation in this game. Um, However, the actual gameplay itself is not. It's not great by any means, and unfortunately, that plagues almost every Ren and Stimpy game that has ever come out. I mean, I don't think I have found one that has been like even I want to say even moderately fun as far as controls go. Like they just I don't know what it is. Like everything else is beautiful about these games, and it really does a great job representing the source material. But then you start playing and you realize that you're starting to see the flaws and the cracks in the product. So I mean, it's nowhere near as terrible as Batman Forever, but I mean it's in that ballpark. Now this next game here, Ultraman. This is, I believe, it plays somewhat like the Godzilla games of that time. I personally just can't get into it. To me, it just feels like it has a really slow start, and it just after a few minutes, I get bored, turn on something else. I mean, it has some really nice graphics. It's I don't know if you're not familiar with the series, which I'm not. I mean, you probably won't understand a lot of what's going on, but it is like a hybrid fighting game. It's okay, but honestly, I mean, it's another one of those games that unfortunately just I just feel like it just did not resonate with me well whatsoever. And well, let's jump on into this next one here. This is Jurassic Park, and yes, this is the Super Nintendo port of it. It seems like the Nintendo version and the Super Nintendo version were kind of trying to be the same thing, and I just couldn't get into this either. I mean, I love the 3D parts of this game. I thought that was very ambitious, but other than that, I mean, the way you play this game outside of those 3D maps, I don't know. I keep getting killed. I can't really get very far in this one at all. Now, this one here is probably one of the least recommended RPGs of any genre, and that is Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. Now, if you've never played an RPG in your life and you feel like you want to have your hand held through the entirety of the game, then this would be a perfect title. But I don't know. I mean, it still has the look of Final Fantasy. It's still, has a lot of the same tropes that the series is known for. It's so easy. I mean, you could beat this game. I would give it like maybe like between 3 to 4 hours. You could have this thing done. I mean, it's not a fantastic game, but you know, again, I mean, there's so many games I would rather play than Batman Forever. Like, these ones at least have some redeeming quality to them. Now, this one is Samurai Showdown. Now, I have a port of this for both the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. I really enjoy this game a lot. I'm really big into fighting games, and SNK was one of those companies that really like knocked them out of the park. Like they did such a great job and have so many games under their belt that were all just phenomenal games for their time. And let's be honest, I mean, fighting with weapons is so much more fun than just, fighting with your fist. Speaking of fighting games, this is Street Fighter 2, the original first release they made for the Super Nintendo. And I also have the manual to this game as well. There's not a lot really that can be said about Street Fighter that hasn't been said a million times over. So I guess I'll just keep this short. It's a fantastic game. Like if you don't have this in your collection, you could easily pick this thing up for like loose $10. I mean, it's a great game. It's a great addition to any Super Nintendo collection. And honestly, I mean, there are a lot of other fighting games out there that, definitely do not warrant the price that they're going for. And I feel like, later installments obviously were better, but for what this is, it's still a great game. This one here is Sim City. Now, I actually played this back in the day. This was my first introduction to the universe of The Sims. I couldn't get very far into it. Like, I maybe played like 2 or 3 hours of this game and got bored. Like, I don't know. I can't get into sim games. Like, I can play stuff like The Sims, but like Sim City and Sim Ant and stuff like that, I get so bored so quickly of those games. But it is a lot of fun. I have played the PC version, and it is a lot like that, minus a few things like the cheat bugs and there were a few other disasters that you could only get in the PC version of this game. Now this is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters. There's also a version of this on the Sega Genesis, although this one here is my pick. Like, because the Genesis version is lacking in so many different ways. Mostly, I mean, obviously it doesn't look nearly as nice as the Super Nintendo version because of, the processing power of that system. But like I want to say I liked the roster. There were a few characters that both games just did not have, and I just happen to like the roster a lot more in this game. Now, this one here, a lot of you will know this one, Super R-Type. This to me is an amazing shooter. Like I like the horizontal and vertical shooter genre, but you know, unfortunately as it is, a lot of them they're just way too overpriced, and honestly, especially if you're hunting on the cheap, sometimes you're just not going to find these things unless you find them in a specialty store or eBay. But this one again is another game you could easily get for like between $10 to $15, and it's a really good time. It's a hard game, but for most shooters are like that anyway. So now this one here, this happens to be one of my favorite games on the Super Nintendo, and a lot of people will say it's crap, but that would be Beavis and Butthead. Now, this is the only version of this game I've been able to beat without using the passcodes. The Genesis version is just brutally difficult compared to this version, and I believe there's I have a Sega Game Gear version of that, and then I believe there's a it's a Game Boy version of that game too. So I do want to get all four of them just to see which is the best of the four ports of Beavis and Butthead, but to me, it's a lot of fun. I would never recommend playing this with another person because you guys have to share a life bar, and sometimes you'll pick the wrong person to team up with. But Other than that, I mean, this is also just a lot of people crap on this game. A lot of people do. And, for whatever reason, I enjoy this. But then again, I enjoy, watching the series on YouTube. I mean, every time I get the chance, I will watch this cartoon over anything else. And, I'm addicted to it. I think Beavis and Butthead is way beyond what people were, really expecting of it back in the day. It's, actually, there's a lot of smart things about it and a lot of really good comedy that still stands out to this day. But, anyways, this is what I was telling you guys about with that hour-long video. I could probably talk about Beavis and Butthead throughout, I would say, half of that video. This game here, though, is Tetris 2. Uh, Not a lot I really have to say about this game. I've played this a couple times just to make sure it works. They also had a port of this for the NES, although I don't know how different it was. But, I mean, for a puzzle game, it is pretty good. Unlike a normal Tetris, they actually set blocks in different patterns. Like, it doesn't necessarily start off like the original Tetris that we got here in the United States, the NES version. But it still is a pretty decent game. I would play it more often if I didn't have so many other good games to play, but it's pretty decent for what it is. Now, this one here, this is the pretty much the black sheep of the Donkey Kong Country series, Donkey Kong Country 3. Now, I actually enjoy this game, but again, not nearly as much as the first two. I think it's just the baby character. He's just super annoying, and then you're not even using Donkey or Diddy anymore. I thought that was such a cop out when I was younger. But it is a lot of fun. It plays, just like the other two games. There's nothing really special that makes it stick out other than the character changes. But yeah. So this next one is Final Fight. Now, I love Final Fight, but, I love the arcade port of Final Fight. I'm not the biggest fan of the Super Nintendo port because of the fact they took out the second player and they got rid of Guy. And yeah, I do realize that there is a game of Final Fight Guy, but I am not willing to pay the price just to play the same game with an additional character. But for what this is, if you don't have the arcade port accessible and you don't have any other Final Fight game, this one's pretty good. Now this was kind of a surprise. This one is Cybernator. It's a Konami game. Basically, you are going around in a mechanized suit, going around blowing up gigantic space stations and other rebels that would, stand in your way. And it is super fun. And I picked up my copy for about, I want to say, 35, 40 bucks. I don't know if it's gone up since then, but it is definitely a game you guys should seek out because it is a lot of fun. Now, this one is Mortal Kombat 2. I think it was either in the last video or could be in the next video. I do have a copy of Mortal Kombat 1. I actually liked Mortal Kombat 2 a lot more than Mortal Kombat 1. And I like the fact, it had the new fighters, the new stages, the blood returns. It's just all the kind of fun you would expect from the first game, but just pretty much ramped up to 11. It is a great time. I enjoy the game a lot. Especially if you're building up, if you're building up a collection of fighting games, definitely go for Mortal Kombat 2. Now, this last deck here, these are some of the games that I really enjoy from this particular segment of my Super Nintendo collection here. This is Super Bomberman. I still have to seek out the other, I think there were like 5 ports of Bomberman made all around the world. I would really like to get a hold of them because even the first one was so much fun. We don't have a multi-tap though, and I wish we did just for this game because it is so much fun. It's pretty much what you would expect with Bomberman, with nicer graphics. You're still blowing people up. You're still traversing, these crazy stages. and you know, it's still the same kind of fun you would expect from a Bomberman game. This here is another one I did not expect to find, and that is Saturday Night Slam Masters. For those of you who have not heard about this game, it's basically Capcom's take on a wrestling game. And what they did, they made all these crazy fighters with, you know, each one has their own unique moves. They included Mike Hagar from the Final Fight series. So, I mean, you have that inclusion as well. And, I mean, if you've played something like WrestleMania the Arcade, this should be very familiar. Like, they've got tons of special moves, tons of, you know, just tons of variety. And that's what these games really need. That's what really makes them stick out, is just how much variety and how much, you know, work they're going to put into a game, you know. But this next one here is Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. Now, I remember getting this game as a kid, and it just blew my mind. Like, just how colorful, you know, the game was itself, the animation, the gameplay itself, you know, even the music is still very nostalgic, even to this day. And there's, you know, obviously there's a reason why this game always shows up on people's, like, top 10 Super Nintendo lists. Like, this game is just, it's amazing. Like, if you're going to start collecting Super Nintendo games, of any of these games that I'm about to show you right now, that this should be the first game you go for. Like, it is just hands down one of the best. Now, this one here I have here in my hand is Breath of Fire. Now it was kind of confusing to me at first, because I seen the SquareSoft logo right here on the front. But then, you know, they said that they were produced by Capcom, and I'm like, well, that's kind of odd. But I guess, you know, from what I had read, that Square had helped them kind of try to sell this in a country that really wasn't accepting of RPGs at that time. You know, it took, you know, it took Japan quite a while for them to really, you know, hammer in the idea that, you know, we need RPGs, which we really do. But it's a really good game. You know, it's, you know, again, like I said, it's the first of the series, so I mean, you're going to be playing as Ryu, you know, turning into a giant dragon and just destroying all kinds of stuff. And it's a great game for what it is, especially with oh god, what was it? Like especially if you're just looking for just a RPG that isn't Final Fantasy, I would definitely look into that one. That one's a really great game. Now this one here is Super Castlevania 4. This is one of the few Castlevania games I've not yet beaten. I'm still working on it. But I think it's a great game. What really sold this to me too is like the first, unlike most Castlevania games, like the first, I want to say like 5 to 6 levels are super easy to play. It might be different for other people, but like I found a lot of this game to be really super easy, and then it just like freaking the difficulty just jumps up out of freaking nowhere. But at that point, you know, you've learned, you know, what moves you can do, what kind of tricks you can pull off with Simon. And like I said, this is one of the, I believe it was one of the first Super Nintendo games to come out here. And I mean, even back then, this thing was impressive. Even to this day, you know, it's still an impressive game. Not one of my favorites as far as Castlevania goes, but you know, I'm looking to actually beat every Castlevania game that I own, and this one's still on that bucket list. So, all right, let's see here. This one here is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4: Turtles in Time. This game, this was when I first started collecting Super Nintendo games. This was one of the games that was on my list, like from the beginning, because I was like, if I was going to start collecting games, I wanted to start getting games that I was familiar with. And for whatever reason, like nobody ever carried this game. So you know, I ended up finding in a specialty store for, I think it was like $5 more than what it was going for on eBay. But you know what? At that point, I didn't even care. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get Turtles in Time, and I'm getting a free game with it anyway. So screw it. I might as well just, you know, chip in and get this game. But as far as, you know, the game itself, it's not my favorite Turtles game, but it is definitely like a solid second place for sure. Like my favorite still will always be Turtles 2 the arcade on the NES. But there was also well, I may show it in another video, but the Genesis also got a Turtles game called the Manhattan Project, and it's kind of like I want to say it's more like a Ninja Turtles medley. Like it's just a collection of, well, it's all one game, but it's like it's got levels from various levels in different Ninja Turtle games, all just crammed into one. And that's pretty badass. Now, this last game I'm going to show you is Super Mario RPG. Now, I did not have any experience with this as a kid because around that time, we were getting a N64. So this one just kind of flew past us. I know it came out like a few months before that, but we were already psyched that we knew we were getting an N64. And we were like, well, you know, why continue buying Super Nintendo games when that's when we're saving our money for? But I've played maybe like, I want to say 3 to 4 hours of this game so far, and I love this game. I think what they did with this was really impressive, and I really wish this would have done. Well, it actually did really well, but you know, like here in the United States, I really wish this would have done a lot better because I mean that would have, you know, gotten us, you know, into more RPGs a lot sooner. You know, it took pretty much up until the PS1 era before people, you know, started noticing that sort of thing. So, anyways, guys, that's part 2 of my Super Nintendo collection. Now, if you like this video, like I said before, please, you know, comment, like, subscribe to my channel. I love making content like this all the time. So, um, you know, like I said, every bit helps as far as you know, the process of making my videos, making my content, and then knowing, you know, exactly what you guys want to see on this channel. So anyways, guys, with that out of the way, thanks again for watching.